Welcome, everyone. This is Michelle Rapp from the Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. And just a quick note, so you'll be able to ask questions at the end of the session through the chat box. You can access all your options through that purple menu on the lower right-hand corner. For those of you that signed in with just your first name, it would help us for attendance tracking if you can just in the chat box type your full name. We would appreciate that. And I work in the Office of Alumni Relations. I do all the career programming for alumni, and we're very delighted to have Ashley Paré, an alumna, joining us today to share her expertise on salary negotiation. And I know this is a topic that we're all very interested in, and my belief is there's always a lot more to learn and to fine-tune our knowledge on this important area. Let me start out by telling you a little bit about Ashley. She is a negotiation coach, speaker, and workshop facilitator who is passionate about closing the gender wage gap. And also, she'll be doing another webinar for us on May 10th that'll be about negotiating a raise and other issues when you're actually hired. And for those of you that are in Boston, she'll be doing a live 2-hour workshop on the evening of May 3rd. And all that information will be on the Alumni Relations website. Ashley is also a negotiation consultant and career coach, and she empowers clients to define their value and to confidently ask for what they are worth. As a consultant to organizations, Ashley develops fair pay practices, conducts salary audits, and provides coaching to leaders. She has over 10 years of experience in corporate human resources and is a regular workshop facilitator on topics of negotiation and gender equality. And she holds a certificate in human resource management from Northeastern. We're very delighted to have her teaching this webinar today. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Michelle. Very happy to be here. And welcome to everybody on our webinar today. We have a great topic and good discussion, so let's get started. Today we'll be talking about knowing your worth, how to negotiate your next job offer. So if you're on the job market or thinking about being on the job market, we are going to tackle the topics of why you should negotiate a job offer, better knowing your advantage in the market, so how do you articulate your worth. We'll go through the process of defining your value, how to put a dollar to your skill sets and experiences and value. We'll talk a bit about deflection strategies and how to work with recruiters from the beginning of the job search to set the appropriate range that you're looking for. We're going to talk about negotiation techniques and then benefits and other factors outside of just base salary, what else you can look for and negotiate during your job search. So I know in the work that I do and the men and women that I meet and talk to, and former employees and clients, there's a lot of fear and concerns about negotiating. You may have some yourself. You may be wondering, is it worth it to ask for more when you receive a job offer? So some of the largest and biggest, most often fears that I hear are, negotiating may cause the employer to pull the job offer. Now, this comes up in all of my sessions, and when I hear that, I poll the room and ask, who has that actually happened to? And I haven't received one person yet who said that they've had an offer pulled. It is a potential. However, I don't think that the risk is high enough to avoid negotiating. So, if you were to ask and the offer is pulled, you can reframe that fear and think about, maybe the company is doing you a favor. Why would you want to work for a company who's unwilling to meet your needs, who's unwilling to negotiate and have a discussion with you to ensure that you're happy before you join? So another fear or perception that you may have is that asking for more will make you look greedy. A lot of times we have to consider, how we'll be perceived if we ask. But ultimately, if you can think about in a new perception that employers want to retain you. They've gone through a long process to find you as their final candidate. They want to give you a fair salary that's going to keep you within the company. So it's not about looking greedy, it's about being paid fairly. And if you're asking on behalf of yourself and your family, it's admirable. Another fear may be the worry over whether or not your new boss will like you. Again, how will you be perceived if you're asking? And I would challenge you to reframe this and think about it as, a discussion, coming to an agreement with your new manager. How do you develop strong communication with your new manager? Having this discussion early on will give you the insights you need as to how this manager will be able to work with you in the future. Are they open? Are they flexible? If they're giving you an answer of no, why? Are they able to explain it to you? So this all proves, valuable to you in your search and helping you to determine if this is the company that you want to be joining. And is it the manager that you want to be working with that will help you grow your career? And another big fear is the fear of rejection. So if you're worried about asking and not getting what you want or being told no, the answer is always no if you don't ask. So I encourage you to be aware of your fears, think through them, try to reframe and position yourself to be, the most successful you can. And part of that is by doing research. So we will talk about why it's important to negotiate, and then we'll get into the how. So next week, April 4th, 2017, is Equal Pay Day. And as Michelle mentioned, I am passionate about closing the gender wage gap. And we are aware from data and statistics that white women earn 80 cents about for every $1 that a man earns, and African American women are earning 63 cents on the dollar. There is a 7% unexplained or biased gender pay gap. So if a female college graduate and a male graduate with the same education and same background apply for the same job, there's already a 7% unexplained gap where the male candidate would receive more. So it's important that as both men and women, we're encouraging people that we know, our family members, our coworkers, to negotiate to help try to close that gap. Women do have some pushback against negotiating, but the more that we're doing it and the more that we're asking employers to take a look at this data and the statistics, hopefully we'll be able to push the needle and make a change. Employers also expect you to negotiate because they typically offer a job that might be lower, a job range or a job salary that might be lower than what they can afford. So they're expecting you to ask for more, so that way they have room to give you money and make the range higher. And also, if you negotiate just $4,000 more on your base, that equates to over $50,000 in 10 years. So a little bit goes a long way. And of course, you're worth it. You should be asking for it to see if you can earn the value that you need in the market so you can retire early. These are all reasons why negotiating your offer matters, because again, if you don't, then you're leaving money on the table or potentially leaving money on the table, and you would never know if you don't ask. So an important piece in the job search is knowing and articulating your advantage. So as you begin your job search and you're looking at job descriptions and you're applying and having phone screens, the research and data that you should be doing prior to that search is very critical. You will want to know how you can articulate, your specific experiences, skills, qualities, characteristics. How are you unique within the marketplace? This presentation today is general research and data that is not industry specific, because we have people from multiple industries all over the country. So I want to leave you with the skills and the ability to take this information today and develop a very personalized plan for yourself. And so when I work with clients one-on-one, we spend a good amount of time on articulating your worth and knowing your strengths. being able to define what makes you a hard candidate to replace, or articulating what you've been recognized for and how that translates into a skill set, that's going to be critical for you as you're going through your job search and landing that new job. But also it's going to be critical in how you articulate why you are worth being paid at the top of a job range. So as you're taking notes here, think about, what makes you a great team leader, what makes you a great individual contributor. Looking at your resume, how do you articulate your story? What do you want to share to your employer that proves that you have what no one else in the marketplace has, and they should be hiring you and paying you fairly and competitively for your skill set. So knowing your advantage is key. An important piece of going into any negotiation, again, this is the homework that you should be doing prior to making any calls with recruiters and or potential hiring managers, is understanding and defining for yourself your target salary, your working range, and your minimum acceptable salary. So a target salary is the base salary that you're aiming for. It's a base salary that you will accept if it's offered to you. And it is a salary that is aligned with the market data for your skill set. So we're going to walk through today an example job, an example posting, and an example website on how to define your own target salary. But in this case, we're just going to use an example that the data shows that $75,000 is a little bit above the median range. So that would be the target salary you're aiming for in your job search. Now, a working range is the salary range that you are going to share with recruiters and or the potential new hiring manager. And so you want to share a range with the employers to show that there's flexibility and to show that you've done your research and the number within that range will be acceptable to you. And the key here is to bolster your target salary. And what that means is you take the bottom number of your working range, make that equivalent to your target salary, and then stretch that number upwards of 20%. So your working range, if your target salary is $75,000 for a specific job, you want to share with recruiters that you're looking for a job between $75,000 to $90,000 based on your market research. Now, this will hopefully ensure that the employer, at the very minimum, will offer you a job salary and job offer that's very close to your target salary. Hopefully you can stretch upward and get more. But if you share only one number versus a range, you're losing out on the opportunity to get even more than what your target salary is. And it's quite likely that the employer would come in below that one specific number that you asked for. And I think this is a really important point and a big aha moment for me earlier on in my career, was that showing flexibility and showing a range meant that there was wiggle room in there, and you become more successful at getting the actual number that you want. Now, the other important piece is knowing when you're going to walk away. Your minimum acceptable salary is the lowest base salary you will accept, or it's your walkaway number. So based on the market data and the salary ranges you've seen online and talked to from peers, what is the minimum number that you're willing to accept based on your budget, based on your career, based on the market data. So there's no magic formula to figure out these numbers. It's a process to determine what feels right for you and what aligns with your education and experience. But I'll show you next how to use what you find online to create your own target salary, working range, and minimum acceptable salary. So again, if you're shooting for $75,000 as a target salary and you know your minimum acceptable salary is $70,000, if the employer cannot go above $68,000, you would want to walk away from that offer knowing that it's not fair for the market or your experience. So how do you determine your target salary and your bolstering range? So it's important that you go to the source to define your market value. So I have a bunch of resources here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is a great resource for anyone within the healthcare or education industry. I mean, all industries are included, but salary.com and glassdoor.com, they have more information on, technology companies and jobs. If you're in a position that is not as readily available from a Glassdoor perspective, you can check the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Freelancer.com is a resource where you can search, if you're a contractor, you can search to see what people with your skill set are offering as freelance rates. And you can also post, whether or not you're offering services. So you can check your rates there. Of course, Glassdoor is an employee-reported website. So employees within the company will share their salary, their benefits, their reviews on companies. Whereas salary.com is an employer-reported website. So employers from all over the country report their earnings. You can get a free report with basic data, and they also have a paid report option to get even more specific for your region and industry. So the key is to prepare and do research and find data from as many resources as you can when you're going into your job search. So that way you're prepared for when the recruiters ask you for your salary expectations. So determining your target salary should be a process that you go through after consulting your peers, talking with a trusted HR colleague perhaps, getting as many data points and as much information as you can from resources. Another really great website you may or may not have heard of is salaryorequity.com. If you're considering a startup and equity is part of your package for your new job, definitely check out that website and you can compare, how valuable that equity package is. And oftentimes it is very valuable. So you may accept a lower salary than you typically would with the risk and reward of equity. So let's talk about salary.com, and I'll walk you through how to use that resource because it's a free resource, and I think for the basics, it shows really good information, and it's just a few clicks away online. So this is a homepage of salary.com. You may be familiar with it. I've plugged in here a software engineer, so that's the data point we'll be looking at today, but you would type in your own job title or the job title of the job that you're looking for. You may have to type in a few different titles and review the job descriptions to see which description best matches the job you have or the job you're looking for. They have tons of job descriptions here, so you want to find the ones that are closest to your skill set and the job you're going to be doing. So you type in the job title and you type in the location. And you would see something like this. You would choose Software Engineer 1, and this shows the job description. Now you can see here the requirements and the responsibilities for the software engineer. It talks about, requires a bachelor's degree in a related area and 0 to 2 years of experience in the field. The primary job function does not typically require independent judgment, reports to a manager. So, this is basics, but you can find out from a leveling perspective whether or not you'd be a software engineer 1, 2, 3, or higher. And you want to check the education requirements and the years of experience. So when you find a position that looks to be similar to what you have in the market, then you would click on this description and click on free salary data. And it would pull up a report that looks like this. So as you're referencing online data, you want to be determining your target salary, so the salary you're aiming for in your job negotiation, based off of the ranges available online. So the median range for a software engineer in Boston is $73,000 per year for base salary. So that's at 50%, the median. So this candidate, if they had 0 to 2 years of experience and a bachelor's degree, they could be expecting around $73,000 for an annual base salary. Now, if you're applying for this job and you have a master's degree and 3 years of experience, you would want to put yourself in the perhaps 75th percentile or even 90th percentile. So you have to, again, knowing your advantage, knowing your worth, your skills and experience, you have to determine for yourself where you believe you fall on the range based off of your experience. So this is, again, an example of a software engineer. If you're coming out of school with your bachelor's degree, you don't have any experience, maybe except for internships, you'd probably be at the 25th percentile. If you've been recently promoted internally, a lot of times you'll be placed at the lower end of the range because you're considered new in that job. So you want to know and ask employers, where do they feel your skill set falls within the range, the approved range of the job. So having all this data available to you online, it really puts you at an advantage to be able to have an intelligent conversation with the recruiters about your pay and your value. So once you've determined your target salary and you've bolstered your range, so you take your target salary and you add up to 20% on that range, then we want to talk about how you deflect talking about salary too early on in your job search. So from an employer standpoint, employers may ask you, please share your salary expectations with me. They want to understand whether or not you're going to fall within their range and their budget. But you don't have to share that information, and I encourage you to be very thoughtful about how you do it. And the first technique is to avoid or to deflect that question and instead, respond with whether or not they can offer their approved range for the job. So something that's really cool here in Massachusetts is that very recently, Massachusetts became the first state to pass legislation, which will go into effect July 2018, that will prevent companies from asking salary history questions during the job search. It'll also require companies to post the approved job ranges online. So this is a huge win to help with pay transparency in the market and to ensure that employers are not paying you based off of what you've earned previously, which may be low because of a gender bias or because you didn't negotiate in your past. So this is really key, and I encourage you to, if you're in Massachusetts, and I know other states are working on it as well, you can say, I'm just not comfortable sharing my salary expectations at this point in the job search. I really appreciate it if you could share your approved range with me. So there's lots of deflection techniques. If you cannot deflect and the employer is asking you to please share, another option is to share early on what your working range is. So you would share that 75 to 90,000 range with them. So that way they know from the beginning that that's what you're looking for. But again, that predetermines that you've done the research and you're comfortable with that range and that is what you want. So as you're going through your job offer, you're going to articulate your worth. And so the employer, when they've determined they want to hire you, they're going to most likely offer you a job over the phone, a verbal offer. And from there, you really begin the negotiation process. So I would first ask about getting the offer in writing, and can you have a few days to review the offer details? You want to make sure that they're including the benefits package, the perks, everything included, not only the base and whether or not there's a variable or commission or a bonus, but all of the additional benefits. So once you have your offer in writing, that's when you can determine whether or not, hey, did this offer come in at my target salary above it or below it, and how do I want to tackle this negotiation discussion? So the cool thing about having a job offer in hand is that you have the most leverage at this point. Joining a new firm means that you have been selected out of a huge pool of candidates. The employer really wants you to join. You have been determined that you're the valuable skill set they need and person with the qualities that they're looking to add to the team. So you don't have to necessarily prove to them again that you are valuable. Now it's just negotiating the details of the offer and showing them that you understand what the market is paying for your skill set and that you want to be paid fairly and competitively. So depending on where they come in with their offer against your target salary, you would want to ask for more. I encourage everyone to ask for more because you don't know what you could be leaving on the table. But you could have a few conversations. It could be a few rounds of discussions with your employer. They're going to have to go back and remember that knowing your audience is key here. Again, how do you leverage this conversation and learn about what your potential new manager knows and feels about the organization? You know, how are they advocating for your behalf from the very beginning? If you're sensing that there's any uneasiness from the manager, you might ask why. So be very curious and listen to learn when you're in the negotiation phase, because you're going to be learning a lot about what that employer is like. You know, you want to ask questions about how often do you review salaries and performance reviews? You know, what's the average merit increase within this organization on an annual basis? Again, think of the negotiation more as a discussion to reach an agreement with your new manager and to determine, is this the right company and position for you? So once you receive the job offer and you have these discussions back and forth, you'll know that the employer can do no more once they tell you that this is the final offer. And again, typically employers will provide you with about a week to review the job offer and get back to them. So be open with them as well if you need more time than that. Now, this is, again, a webinar to help encourage you to do the research you need, to think about your personal situation. We'll definitely open it up for questions at the end, because I know there's many different industries, there's many different nuances, but I'm hoping that this session will provide you with some good information to ground yourself in data to be able to have a really great conversation and get a competitive offer during your next job search. Now, the other piece to the negotiation table is knowing yourself really well and knowing what is really important to you right now. So in your current job search, you know, what is it that you're really looking for? Is it the name or brand name of a company? Do you want to really be able to make an impact, so you want to work within a smaller company? Are you looking for a diverse culture? Do you want a company that's going to help pay off student loans or provide leadership development? So again, this is another exercise for you to think about. You know, if for some reason this is a job offer from your dream company and they are $7,000 below your target salary, you know, how much are the softer pieces, the softer skills, the softer nuances worth to you? So you have to consider that, yes, you're striving for a valuable offer, for a competitive offer on the salary. Your base salary is very important because that's how your increases are calculated on a yearly basis. That's how employers will contribute to your potentially 401k. But you can't underestimate how important work-life balance is, or your day-to-day. This is going to be a career and a job and a place that you invest your time in. So you want to make sure that the company is willing to invest in you as well. So maybe scratch out on a piece of paper what are your top 5 most important aspects of a job. And as you're going through your job search, rate each company on how they rank on your top 5. Because those are the other side, the other pieces to the puzzle when you're trying to determine if you want to join a new company. You know, challenging work and earning recognition is very important to some, whereas maybe a family leave or vacation policy is more important to others. So how does money and the base salary and overall earnings compare to the work-life balance as well? So on that note, my killer bees, the very important pieces outside of salary negotiation are benefits, bonus, your bedtime, and of course, I would love to encourage you to be fearless during this process. But you can't discount the importance of having really good benefits within a company. And you can negotiate stock options. You can negotiate perhaps on the 401k match. You want to understand healthcare and paid time off plans. If you can negotiate parking, please let me know how you did it, because in many cities it's very difficult to get paid parking. So these are all other pieces that you want to think about as, you know, how can you close the gap with the employer in order to come on board if they're coming in a bit short on the base that you were hoping for. You want to understand, again, how the company pays their employees. Is it on an annual basis that you're up for a review? Is it a quarterly MBO program? So you can negotiate whether or not you receive a sign-on bonus. Perhaps you can ask the employer for a $10,000 sign-on bonus to help meet you in the middle if they're missing out on the base. Of course, a bonus is just that. It's a bonus, a one-time payment, but it could be something else that you can ask for that they're willing to be flexible on. And again, don't forget to ask about company profit sharing and stock options. Even if they're a private company, you can ask about equity. Now, no matter what phase of your career you're in, I highly encourage you in today's market with technology and work from home that you protect your personal time, that you're able to get to bed at a normal time, because as your career grows and more responsibility is taken on, if you're working all hours and available at all hours early in your career, it may be hard to shift from that or negotiate from that later on. So other pieces to be aware of when you're negotiating is, can you work from home? Can you negotiate protected time where you're letting them know that, you know, between 6 and 9 p.m. you will be not available, you know, off hours. So we can get really flexible and creative on how we negotiate to protect our, again, work-life balance. And, you know, depending on your industry, you can also negotiate whether or not you can bring on, you know, an admin to help support you. If you're a doctor, I know I've had some conversations with doctors who negotiated to have an additional scribe on their team so that way they could see more patients to be able to earn more because it was not flexible in their salaries. So you want to get really creative about how you ask for what you need to be paid competitively and fairly, and also be able to have a life. So I wanted to share with you some additional resources to help you in your search in determining your in determining your salary and determining your target salary more specifically. So Paycheck City is a payroll calculator. So if you want to determine how much that $4,000 extra really means to you in your paycheck over a year, you would go to Paycheck City, type in your base salary, the benefits, and it'll tell you what you'll be earning after taxes in your paycheck. So that's another motivator for you to ask for even more because you can really see how it adds to your budget. So for any government contractors and or small business owners or entrepreneurs looking to start a company or solopreneurs, SBA.gov is an amazing resource for women and men who are starting their own companies. Lots of resources on how to become a government contractor and setting your rates. So I found that resource very valuable. Get Raised is another website Matt Weiler is his name, and he designed GetRaised.com and also what we talked about earlier, which was SalaryOrEquity.com. So again, another resource to help you determine your worth and determine if you should be asking for more. And AngelList.com is a great website for startups. So you can, again, gather rates, see what startup companies are paying from a base and equity standpoint, and you can also apply for jobs there as well. And some books here. Ask For It by Linda Babcock is an amazing resource on how to negotiate. And We Should All Be Feminists is one of my favorite stories about men and women helping to change our culture by raising our children, believing in equality and acting within through equality. So I encourage you to check out these resources. And I wanted to leave enough time to answer questions for those that are on the webinar today. I know we covered a lot, and it's a very nuanced and complicated and deep topic, but I'm hoping that you've been able to get the basics of how to define your value and go into a job offer negotiation. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ashley, for this really helpful information and some of the nuanced details. I'm excited to check out some of those links as well, and I'm sure others are too. Participants can use the chat box to type in their questions, and that's accessible by the little purple menu at the bottom right-hand corner of the page. So please go ahead and let us know any questions that you'd like to pose to Ashley. And Ashley, I'm going to ask a question while we're waiting for some of the chat. Actually, let's go to one of these questions. Let's see. Okay, now the questions are coming in. Is there anything you would suggest specific to relocation and/or changing career industries or changing careers?
Yeah, so if you're changing careers, it's important that you're gathering the data for that new career and really determining for yourself, you know, what from your previous career, your previous life, what have you already accomplished that you can apply to the new job, whether or not specific experience in that industry or that specific role. It's about you sharing your story and making yourself relevant. So you may have to come in at a lower end of the range if you're switching careers and expect to move up from there. But I encourage you to, you know, look at your resume, look at the job descriptions, ask people in that field and industry, you know, what is most important. You know, is it a specific system that you're going to need access to, or is it a leadership skill that you might have been using in your previous job that you can really articulate, whether or not you have to learn a new industry. So I think more and more people are flexible and on the go. So it's just about telling your story and knowing the data points for the new industry to determine, you know, if they're coming in really low or acceptable on a salary. Relocation, that's a good point too. You can negotiate relocation. If an employer, your current employer or a new employer wants you to move, definitely ask them to provide a moving stipend, reimbursement for all your travel. If you have a family, you know, they need to consider that, and timing. So employers that want to retain you will typically offer relocation packages.
Great, thank you. Another question is, should you negotiate before you have the actual offer sent over?
So I think the best practice there would be to wait until the offer is in writing. If the employer is really pushing to know your number, if they're saying, you know, I need to get an offer approved for you, what are you looking for, then it's up to you if you want to deflect and ask them to pull together their best offer, or if you want to share with them your working range. So if you are asked to give a number before you get something in writing, then I would just add 10% to 20% more of what you really want, because you know, they're going to probably come in lower and you're going to want to negotiate.
Great.
But
we did have a couple of different questions about handling salary negotiation when you're an internal to a company. And are any of these suggestions different? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so the second webinar in May that I'll be hosting will talk about, how to ask for a raise or a promotion when you are internal. So it is a bit more nuanced, and you really have to understand the players within the organization. Something that happened to me personally in my career was that, my manager hadn't asked for a raise in so many years. And so when I asked for one, it brought up a lot of emotions for that person. And you need to get a sense of who the key players are, who the approvers would be, and really plan and prepare timing-wise when to ask. So I would hope you would join for that next session, because that one really is a whole other topic. But understanding when the performance review cycle is within your company and asking, outside of that for any raise or promotion is typically when you can be the most successful, because there's more budget available.
What would you suggest as a negotiation tactic if you'd like to stay close to your current salary, but it is far above the median for that role or title?
Can you say that again? What would you, if you're at the top end of the range, what's the question?
How do you negotiate if your salary is above the median for that role or title? Or I guess if your current salary is above the median.
Yeah, so if you're already at the top end of the range, or if you're above the median and you want to be getting a raise or being paid at the higher end, it's just about articulating your value. Perhaps you're in the wrong level or the wrong range. But, if an employer were to say to you, I'm sorry, I can't give you an increase because you're the highest paid person on your team, or you're at the top end of your range, then I would respond with something like, I can understand the difficult situation that must put you in, but what do you need from me to help advocate and help me determine, if this is a company I want to grow my career with? So if you're up against, the top end of the range, that it's really about a career development discussion. What else is important to you? Is it getting leadership training? Is it going to outside certification programs? Is it moving departments? So I think if you're at the top end of the range and they're not willing to do anything monetarily for you, it becomes a discussion about your career development and soft skills. And could you be paid more in the marketplace? Are other companies paying more than what your current employer is paying?
And what are your suggestions for talking about work-life balance during a negotiation without sounding lazy?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's proven that when you're negotiating on behalf of others, so your family, you're typically more successful. So I think today, in today's technological world, it's not as shocking, depending on what industry you're in. But, you can be honest and let them know that, you're very active in your community outside of the office. You're a member on these leagues or committees. You're very active in your family life, and you just want to ensure that you're able to provide the best to the employer during your working hours, and that, to keep you happy and retain you. It's also important for you to be able to be active in your personal life as well.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Just taking a look at the questions here.
You said you had one too, Michelle, right?
I know, and now I forgot it.
Oh, no.
I know. And folks, feel free to continue to type in some questions. So Ashley, I am going to ask you some of these questions that are related to the next workshop because some of the people are actually here.
Sure.
There are some questions about when to start talking with your manager about a raise, and especially in relationship to the performance review system. So anything else, because people are thinking about that topic already.
Yeah, so if you're on a calendar year for performance cycles, then it depends on the timing. So you want to go into, let's just say your annual review is coming up and you're thinking about a raise or a promotion. If your performance review is in April, where you have the discussions and company raises are given in April, then it's going to probably be too late to get the raise and promotion in April. But I encourage you to have that discussion with your manager in the review meeting to say, going through your last year's work, you've taken on additional responsibilities. So-and-so left from the team and you took on this, you really stepped it up and were able to bring in more revenue for the company. You hit your numbers. Whatever it is, use your past year's experience, show how you've added to the bottom line of the company, either saving the company money or bringing in revenue to the company. Use that in your discussion with your manager to say, I'm really interested in being promoted within the next 6 months to a year. Can we talk about how we can make that happen? Is there anything else you think I need to be working on or developing in order to be able to make that happen? So it opened the conversation during the year-end review, if that's coming up very soon. The conversation would be very similar if it was outside of the review, but you just want to set a meeting with your manager to talk about career development. So instead of saying, hey, I want to talk to you about a raise, which they might avoid having that meeting, you just want to talk to them about your career development. But either way, you could probably expect, I would say on average, 3 meetings with your manager, if not your manager and your manager's manager, before you get a promotion or raise. So you can start the discussion at any time, but it's harder for your boss to get anything approved when budgets are locked down either at the end of a fiscal year or the end of the calendar year, or when the performance reviews are going through. So I would ask your finance team or HR or a manager if they know what time, when a budget's approved, when a budget's closed. Get a better sense from your organization about whether or not promotions are only given out once a year. So it's all dependent upon the timing, but having that discussion with your manager that you're interested in being promoted, you want to know how you can continue improving to get there, starts that conversation, and it keeps it fair and open. Please don't wait until you're so frustrated and emotionally upset to be able to barge into your manager's office and say, I can't take it anymore, I need a raise. So you want to be thoughtful and, again, prepare and plan for these discussions to help give you the best chances. We're all humans. We all have our own stories about our career and money. And ultimately, you really do need a team of people that are going to advocate on your behalf to get you that promotion.
One additional question related to this is, if your company is having a hiring or a salary freeze, what else can you negotiate on besides salary?
Yeah, so if the company is not offering annual increases or may have had a bad year, you can still have a discussion about whether or not they have a date for the freeze to be lifted. That you're trying to understand how long this freeze may be. The importance for you of being able to earn for your family is big. So, you can negotiate for maybe additional PTO. You can negotiate for leadership opportunity, right? Like, what skills can you build while you're there? So that way, if the freeze goes on indefinitely, you're adding to your resume. You're building your resume and skill set, so that way you become worth more in the marketplace. Really anything is negotiable. You just have to get creative. If they're telling you that there is no budget and money is really tight, then you can ask them point blank, should you be worried? Should you be looking for another job? Because that will usually get them to share more information about budgets and raises, and whether or not it's an across-the-board situation or if that's just something the employer is telling you.
Great, thank you. And coming back to the deflection strategies early on in the hiring process, there may be employers that are not aware of the new legislation, and there are some employers that press on that topic. How do you keep things friendly, but still, what are some things you can say to keep that deflection happening?
Yeah, I mean, from an employer standpoint or a recruiter standpoint, if they're pushing it, it's really because they want to know if they can afford you. Because they don't want hiring and interviewing is a very time-consuming and costly process for employers. So they're using it, rightly or wrongly, as a vetting process. So if they're pushing you and you don't feel comfortable giving your number because you think you may be selling yourself short or you just don't want to, I would just encourage you to ask them to share the approved salary range for that role, because the employer will always have an approved range. So if you push it back on them, and you can just say, I'm not comfortable sharing my salary. It's what my mentor taught me. Give it. I'd love to continue working, going through this interview process to better understand how my skill set and my experience can add value to the organization. Then I'd love to have the discussion about compensation. Letting them know that it's important to you, but not the right time is, being flexible. Again, it's just having a conversation, and if the employer is someone who says, you have to tell me or we're not going forward, then think about what working it would be like. So, again, use these phone conversations, these in-person interviews to your advantage to figure out if this is, the culture, the type of people that you want to work with. And if they're not flexible and if they're being nasty on the phone over these discussions, then for me, that would be a red flag.
Good point. Also, when you are in a hiring process, especially with a large corporation, how do you find out where your offer falls within the real range for that position so that you can understand room for growth with your salary?
Yeah, I would ask that exact question. You get the offer, you thank the manager or HR and say, I'm so excited about this offer. Thank you so much. Based on my research, I was expecting, $7,000 or $8,000 more on the base. Can you share with me where my offer falls in your approved range for this position? I'd like to better understand my growth opportunities. I'd like to understand if, you've placed me at the median, which is where I believe my skill set lies. So I would just ask them straight out where their offer falls in their range.
Perfect. Also, when you are in salary negotiation, is there a sequence? Should you start with the salary first and then go to other benefits? And also, how much back and forth tends to happen? Once you put out what you're looking for, what can I expect?
Sure. So I'll answer the second piece first. So there's no magic number on how many back and forths, but you want to get the offer in writing, you want to review it, and you want to come up with your list of asks. So what will you ask for? And that will include everything from, do you want to ask for a higher base? Do you need more PTO? The sign-on bonus. So I would ask the employer after a couple of days of reviewing the offer, hey, can we set up some time to talk? I have a few questions. There's different best practices or different theories on how to approach what you're asking for, but I would say to ask for enough things that the employer can say no to some and yes to others. In that first conversation, I would give them the full list of, I'm hoping you're able to do something on the base. I'd also like to consider a sign-on bonus as an option. I would put it all out on the table because they're most likely going to have to go back to somebody else, and just let them know that you're trying to get to a place of yes, that they're close, but these are all of the points that you're hoping that they can work on for you. And so they'll probably come back and maybe give you one or two things, and then it'll be just important for you to say, I really appreciate that you're able to budge here, but is there really anything else you can do on my base? It's very important for me going forward. So until the employer says this is our final and last offer, you might have a few discussions as they're working through the different pieces. But again, the base salary is going to determine, your increases over the next few years. So it's guaranteed money. So don't leave that piece out.
Great. And I just had another question with this. So are these negotiations typically happening by phone? When should you ask for in person? Sometimes people have asked me if they can do certain things by email. What do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I hear that a lot. And I think my advice is to do it in person and or over the phone as often as possible. I would avoid email only for these reasons, because if you sent an email and you have no idea whether it's landed in their inbox, you're probably going to open yourself up to stressing about where did it go, when are they going to get back to me. You put it out into the universe, and it's less in your control. Also on email, you don't know what the employer is thinking when they get it. You have no way to determine if they were happy, excited, angry. You don't know their response. So it's really important in these discussions to be on the phone or even see their reaction in person, especially if you're asking for a raise, because a lot of times people's facial expressions and body language will tell you even more than their words. And you want to use the information that you gain from having a live conversation to your advantage. You can even point out, I notice that you're getting a little tense right now, or, your tone of voice has changed. Is there something that, is worrying you about this discussion? Or you can put it out there, right? It's really about good communication to understand, will somebody be willing to work with you on your behalf? So I would send an email to say, I have a few questions. Can we set up some time to talk? I think that works the best.
Wonderful. And I'm going to just ask one last question, which is related to, can you negotiate when you're being paid by commission as well as bonuses? Are they up for negotiation?
Yeah, my answer is always everything is potentially negotiable. So commission, you can ask for a higher commission rate or to change your split. If you're doing really well and you're a commission earner, potentially if they aren't able to just give you a higher commission component, then, would you be willing to lower your base in order to get a higher commission payout if you're really doing well and that's a big piece of your pay? Bonuses, of course, you can ask for a quarterly bonus, or if you've just worked on a project, taken on a lot of extra responsibility because you're covering for somebody or a new client came in, you can ask for a one-time bonus to be recognized and rewarded for that additional work. So it's really all about, how you can show your value to the company and what it is you want to ask for.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for these excellent resources, negotiation strategies. You brought up a lot of things that may be new for people, and it is true that so many things are negotiable. And, as evidenced by some of the questions coming in here, we've already set the stage for your next webinar on the 10th, where we're going to look at being an internal employee and how to get a raise, how to work with other possibilities so that you can advance financially and professionally. And some of us may be seeing you live in Boston, and that information will be on the website for the May 3rd workshop happening on campus. So thanks for everyone who joined us today, and thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your expertise. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.